anyone there? Hello? Waking up in chains and darkness, I wouldn't wish it on anybody, not even my worst enemy. It was cold and smelled like a hospital smell, you know, the disinfectant and shiny tools in every room. Who's there? Suddenly a light that was sure to be as bright as the sun stood to attention, almost blinding the man. A few seconds after his eyes adjusted, he found himself in a laboratory of some kind, with beakers and microscopes scattered throughout the giant room that left his voice just an echo. On the other side of the room, there was a woman, chained up in the same fashion. Hey you, lady, hey, wake up! She didn't move or make a sound. He just sat in disbelief and looked around the room, in the metal chain like a dog collar around his neck, and just started going over in his head how he got here and why. Just as the room fell silent, the lady awoke with a scream and a kick. Where the hell am I? They made eye contact across the room, and all that was seen was pure fear in both their eyes. She must have made the connection that this man was also a prisoner just like her, because she asked him why this was happening. She must have seen the mirrored fear in his eyes as she had. They spoke for what must have seemed a lifetime to them, but was only around 20 minutes. I found out her name is Beth, and she's American, he being British. She was 24, and I could deduce that if they wasn't in this situation together, that she would be the kind of woman that he would ask out for sure. He seemed very keen. I just found out the man's name is John, and he's 22. And I don't see how this is relevant, but there you go. Just as the room fell silent again, an echoing, booming voice was heard by both. I am the Invigilator. You are both here of my doing. 2 healthy patients to volunteer to be my subjects in my next experiment. Who the hell are you? Please be quiet, Beth. Now you 2 are in this room against your will simply because it's easier than asking you. No one would want to volunteer for this anyway. So this is what's about to happen. I have been working on an experimental gas that, if I can correct, would be the greatest weapon in history. It has the ability to end war with not a single bullet fired. I have connected this room you now sit in to a 3-ton canister that I have, which contains my compound, and by the time I've finished talking, it will start to creep into the room you now sit in through the various vents throughout the lab. I will monitor the reaction, but don't worry, this is my second attempt at this, so you have a strong chance that I haven't got the formula just right at the moment, and you will walk free out of here. With a pocket full of cash, of course. Well, let's begin, and thank you for taking part in my experiment. Beth and John just stared at each other, with more fear now than ever. Both their attention was drawn to a vent on the wall between them that starts to ooze a thick yellow gas that creeped down the walls and across the floor. Beth screamed as it touched her, as if it was made of her worst fears. A few seconds later it started to crawl up John's leg, and I could tell it didn't hurt him, or her, she was just scared. I know the gas is only warm and not hot, and by the time it reached John's face, he'd already inhaled what felt like more than his lungs could carry. Beth and John were no longer visible to each other, but they called for each other. Each one tried to console the other in what was most probably their last moments on Earth. It's quite sad, really. The whole room was a mist of yellow now, and they were both not talking or struggling anymore. Their fates seemed certain now. The smoke cleared and left 2 shells of a man and woman lying on the ground. Beth, John, can you respond? Silence. John, can you hear me? Silence. A man entered the room and confirmed them both to be dead. He was followed into an adjacent room, clearly an observer's room, to meet a tall man in a suit that looked as though it was made of spider silk. It glistened 1,000 colours. He spoke with a deep, clear tone and was holding a clipboard and pen and was writing. He spoke as he wrote. Test 12. They have again perished. The gas proving fatal. Tweaks to the compound will be made in time for the next trial. which will commence in 1 minute. The candidates are ready. To my log, entry 13th trial, time 10:03 AM. Okay, wake them up, 10:04 AM. Cue the audio greeting. Let's get this started. We shouldn't even go into this house, even though it didn't have a front door. Walking through the broken halls of that old house, I remember thinking of just how someone could live here. There was no front door, no lights, running water, heat, nothing. The house had to be at least 10 bedrooms, and if someone did live here alone, they must have been lonely. The house itself is in the middle of one road, and is the only house for around 3 miles in every direction.